our next game of the day. It is, again, going to be blitzchung, who we saw take down Frosty yesterday, up against Shaxy, who we have seen very little of so far in Grandmasters.
I do believe it was just 1 week where he made top 8 and didn't manage to make it to top 4. So it was just a single day where we got to see Shaxy on stream. But you did mention that last year he was definitely one of the strongest players. And right now, looking to bring close to the, well, I guess possibly the most standard lineup, because it's the 3 decks that we saw as the highly brought one. And then the 4th deck being the, I mean, highest, but still not 50% after those 3, which is Druid.
Yeah, a different approach from both of these players, mainly from blitzchung, who yet again we are seeing, obviously, not bringing the warrior. He can't change it up between days. But most interestingly of all to me, leaving up the warrior, he has extreme disrespect, it feels like, for this archetype, not bringing it, not banning it. And to be perfectly honest, Gia, for both him and Kin, who have the same strategy, they've been quite consistently punished by the warrior.
It seems so. We couldn't figure it out yesterday what the whole strategy was, and I wish we were able to communicate easily with these players. But of course, they won't want to be divulging their strategies on stream. So it leaves these two buttheads to try and figure out what's brewing up in Kin and blitzchung's land. And I gotta say, maybe that Hunter has potential, because mid-range does seem to be the way to go if you're trying to get there against warrior. Like a lot of wide minions that are small doesn't seem to get there against risky skipper, but maybe on-curve play after on-curve play can present a little bit too much pressure for them. Yesterday we saw blitzchung mulligan away that type of curve.
We did. It was interesting, to say the least, watching blitzchung play yesterday. But this is the kind of thing I really like to see. Even if I don't agree with it in the end, I love to hear the thought process or the reasoning behind players and why they go for these alternative lines. Because it's easy to see everything that everyone is saying on social media about how warrior is broken, warrior is the best deck in the game, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. If you don't believe that yourself, if you think you have differing information based on your own games, that's perfectly fine to disagree with that and try and go for an alternate strategy. It doesn't become taboo to disagree with the rest of the community about it. And while it is clearly going against the grain, I really hope, for blitzchung's sake, that we get to see a demonstration of his strategy in being one of the very, very few players to not ban warrior.
True enough. We won't get to see another display from Kin today, so it is up to blitzchung to prove that warrior maybe is not as good as everybody thinks, but not quite in this first game, because it will be rogue versus hunter.
That is right. The Highlander Hunter for blitzchung, a little bit different to the Face Hunter that we saw from Staz and Chonsu, and I think it will be working to his detriment in this matchup at least, given that you have that little bit less aggressive potential, or quite significantly less aggressive potential, of course. But it does transition with some very strong benefits of its own, primarily the Highlander cards, Zephyrus and Bran, both of which I would be very happy to see in the mulligan.
Mm-hmm. It is dinner time here in GMT +8 time zone, so we see Shaxy just hanging out in the kitchen, I suppose, getting his snacks in while getting the wins in for his sake, hopefully. And blitzchung here, Desert Spear always looks pretty premium, because against Rogue particularly, they're playing a lot of these lackeys, these small annoying minions that Hunter, outside of exactly that Desert Spear, often has to expend extra damage to deal with.
Pretty cool card that we are seeing there from Shaxy is the Umbral Skulker, I believe that card is called, which we rarely, if ever, see played in Rogue. You would think it would be there all the time. It's the payoff card for Galakron, but it definitely feels to be, of all the payoff cards, the weakest of the bunch, because your hand is so full most of the time anyway. But it is a card I like a lot, even if I don't think it's that good, and I hope it works out well for Shaxy.
Indeed. I mean, I'm somebody that doesn't even rely on Greyheart Sage. I'm not a believer in it, and Sottle can, hate on me as much as he wants for saying that. But the Umbral Skulker seems even more greedy, because it's even more expensive. But we'll see if it works out for Shaxy here. It can do some pretty insane combos with something like Edwin.
The off-curve cat that you draw the turn after you want to play it is always a bit of a difficult thing to consider. The upsides is you have it on board. It increases your options with what you get as the reborn minion. But it does mean that you're not necessarily guaranteed Miscreant on the board.
Right. It also means that you're put off a turn of dagger if he wants to go something like backstab miscreant, but blitzchung plays the 1 minion on turn 2 that can't be backstabbed by Shaxy.
Kind of works out well, though, for Shaxy overall, given that he now has the ability to clear this off, whereas otherwise he was looking at a tremendous amount of damage coming through.
But what's his next turn if he does that? This might sound drastic, but I'm considering backstabbing this cat just to get the miscreant down.
So let's look at what information Shaxy has, actually, because he knows that there is a buffed up 3-cost beast in blitzchung's hand, right? Which is almost certainly coming down, be it the Griffin or Zixor. And therefore, he is guaranteed a backstab target on the following turn. It's still not great because he's met with a very big minion. But I think because of that, I prefer this line because Miscreant, at the very least, can come down.
Yeah, very true. And then he can play one of those lackeys to fill out the rest of the curve. But I think for Shaxy, that's the one he didn't want to see. Actually, both of them are very scary, but at least the Diving Griffin at 4 health could possibly be taken down by something like Backstab and Cobalt Lackey. But the Zixor, near immortal, 7 health on turn 3, only outclassed by the Warmaul Challenger.
The worst minion to see there was especially Zixor, but especially Diving Griffin.
The 1-card combo. As far as options for blitzchung, he could just go... I'm thinking what Zephyrus gives here, but Shaxy is not happy with this angle. Are we going to see what he's eating for dinner?
The POV of my camera 5 minutes before we go live.
I wonder.
It's whatever you're doing, buddy. It's not fixing it. I hate to break it to you.
I'm very distracted. He could obviously go for just Diving Griffin to 1-for-1 the Miscreant. Seems very slow. So instead, blitzchung is just gonna preemptively develop the Desert Spear. I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, the one thing I'm really glad we didn't see is Zephyrus. I feel like there's many significantly better options than whatever it would offer you on this turn, like, I don't know, Shadow Word Pain, or a Sorcerer's Apprentice probably is the best 2-drop. I can't concentrate on the game, Shaxy. It's too much, man.
Just cover that half of the screen there. In any case, concentrate on this. We've got a questing online now. I didn't even notice that was in the list. It's a 2 of.
Oh, this is a tough choice, right? Plague of Madness is, at first glance, really good. It allows you to kill off the Zixor, and it overwrites the Desert Spear.
It does.
But it does... Thanks, production. It does, of course, also mean that it allows your opponent to kill off the questing.
But this is insane, though. He can clear off everything but the... Sorry, he can clear off everything from blitzchung's side of the board. He backstabs his 2-2, rushes the Ethereal, trades 2 minions and the dagger onto the Zixor, and then says to blitzchung, you need to have the Zephyrus for this. He got the bad news that he does, but it's a good play nonetheless.
Yeah, it's not exactly Zephyrus, though, is it? Because Rotnest Drake would be incredibly powerful here as an answer.
Sure.
I still think it's probably the best play that Shaxy could go for, because this absolutely swings the board around and gives him the best chance of pulling things back. But even Diving Griffin alone, actually, does swing things back in blitzchung's favor.
Just notice that the Desert Spear that blitzchung invested 3 mana into last turn, despite it not doing anything immediately, is really paying off for him here. Even committing the Ooze without its battle cry, just to make sure that it's got something on board going into a very powerful Varanus plus Desert Spear turn.
That's not a great way for Shaxy to spend his mana, but given the amount of Colossi over the moon we've seen on previous turns, it's not the worst either.
Blitzchung's curve is coming together. He doesn't quite have a turn 7, but luckily Zephyrus can shore that up for him if he wants. Varanus now into, well, probably some type of Zephyrus play. Into Zixor, into Alexstrasza. That just seems near insurmountable. Shaxy's
disgusting.
Not invoked at all, if I remember.
I think you're right, yeah. Who knows? Maybe he just plays it here because he sees a wrapped golem when your opponent has the Desert Spear. Like, Desert Spear just destroys this wrapped golem, taking out the 1/1 taunt and then the 7/1 left over after Varanus trades. And that's the best case scenario.
It is pretty icky, but if you're Shaxy, maybe you're thinking that if the Varanus trades, that's kind of a win. Because I think that blitzchung's the aggressor here.
Obviously, Shadow of Death now costs 3, which makes it a little bit harder for blitzchung to like manipulate the mana perfectly.
It costs 2.
2. Sorry, down to 2 from.
But I got what you mean. I think it would still give the death even if it's not curved. But I'm looking for something more aggressive here. I want to find a way to get Wind Fury off of Zephyrus. There it is!
Well, there it is. Zephyrus agrees.
I don't know if that's what blitzchung was planning for, but I think it's good. He's got this Dragon Hammer, Storm Hammer, Scam Hammer, whatever you want to call it, and just 14 damage base now. It's good.
I think he was definitely anticipating Shadow of Death there. But Zephyrus is saying, you know what, buddy? Let me help you out here. There's one place that you should be aiming this damage, and that is face.
Oh, but blitzchung's taking the trade on the second one. I'm upset. Not saying it's wrong, I'm just upset.
Very, very weird options all there together. I am honestly quite surprised that Zephyrus did not offer Shadow of Death as an option there.
Could have put Shaxy down to 8, and he would have still been at, I guess, 19 if the Rat Golem goes face. I think Shaxy would have had to take the trade there. And then he just has Zixor Prime to shore up the board if he falls behind, right? Anyway, for Shaxy, it's still quite awkward because none of the combo effectors can go off without using the other combo effector.
Which kind of makes me lean again towards just Galakron. It's not especially powerful here, but the rest of your turn just isn't doing enough.
Eric, I just had an epiphany. If I think like Zephyrus, I must be a terrible player.
No, you're getting the perfect card every time. You're 300 IQ minimum.
But then I give Brightwing.
Yeah, there's no excuse for that.
Anyway, this Zixor is absolutely insane for blitzchung. Let's clear off everything but the second half of this Murloc. Push damage phase. Got the Alexstrasza for follow-up. And it was only one of this Scalable for Shaxy. I don't know how he's coming back. Other than the flick.
Well, flick is the way he's coming back. Yeah,
Never
in order
mind.
to kill off the Zixor. It's the only play on this turn. But even then, I fully agree with your point. This Zixor was still insane. It just completely cleared the board, neutralized all of Shaxy's threats, and just leads very, very nicely up to a super safe Alexstrasza.
And if you can call a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza safe, then you must be far in the lead. Because technically this card is, you know, quite greedy. On turn 9, you're tending not to answer anything, but that's an answer. Potentially on the 4/6? But alright. Not that insane.
Really doesn't matter. It's just the body. That's what matters here. Nigh on unanswerable now for Shaxy. He needs to find, I don't even know what Gia off of the Galakron.
Not that.
Kronks, as a singular card, is just a 6/6 here. Does not get the job done.
Well, if you draw it off of the Galakron, he has Seal Fate and some minions that can trade. I think he can remove everything but the Ysera and technically stay alive with a 6/6 on board. Either way, since I think we've seen 0 invokes, you probably just start with the Galakron rather than the Seal Fate, right?
Yeah. Let's go for it after.
Oh, he wants a questing. So is there some other out that we're not thinking of?
I don't think so. I'm thinking Kronks is pretty much the only thing that he can hit.
In which case you don't play the questing, right? Because you need to Seal Fate.
Or, well, okay, he can not clear the board, but stay alive with other draws like Eviscerate.
Sure. But blitzchung does just have this one in the bag, I think. Yeah, with the Unleash the Hounds, that is 17 damage.
Very nicely done. 1-0 victory, as kind of expected in this matchup, despite Shaxy's slightly different build of the Rogue, getting rid of the secrets, questing instead, as well as the Umbral Skulkers thrown in there to try and make one big minion. We can clearly see blitzchung's aggression with the Hunter, even though he missed 7 damage to face, much to Gia's chagrin, is still too much for Shaxy.
It's gonna be a bit rough for Shaxy, but I hope that he'll be calmed down, perfectly aligned camera for the next game, and he can direct all of his focus onto trying to defeat blitzchung, because now blitzchung only needs to get the win with his Rogue and Druid, because he himself is not bringing Warrior, as we said a while ago.
That is correct. He is, of course, not banning the Warrior on the other side, which I think is probably his biggest detriment to his game plan at the moment. Although, having said that, yesterday when he lined up the Druid, up against Frosty's Warrior, I believe, he came very, very happily into a win, very easily as well. Frosty couldn't really stand up at all to what blitzchung was doing. So maybe he's got something secret brewing with his Druid that can take the win over the Warrior. But I'm trying to reach for straws here to try and get blitzchung's strategy. I think overall the Warrior is still in with a great chance of taking a win for Shaxy.
Yeah, as far as Druid builds go, there's nothing out of the ordinary here from blitzchung. It's the same as what we've been seeing since last week and the week before, ever since Rivius included that Ysera. So I don't think it's a difference in lineup building, but probably a difference in how their mindset is towards the matchup, or just a secret strategy or play style that we are not aware of. And I can't wait to see it. But before that, we've got to go to a quick break. So don't go anywhere, guys.
We are back with Hearthstone Grandmasters, and apparently we just got word that the slight disruptance that we were having with Shaxy's cam was in fact his cat that was just cut off from being on camera right at the end. A little bit sad to see that. I always love seeing the GM pets make an appearance whenever they are disrupting the players. My heart still stays with Boar's cats, Billy and Bessie, but I'm willing to make some exceptions for the APAC pets as well.
I mean, it seems that Shaxy's cat is a little bit less cooperative than Billy and Bessie, who seem to just like appearing on camera but not kind of knocking over the camera. But we'll see. Cats are cute. But you know, what isn't cute is having to come from an 0-1 deficit and win the series, which is Shaxy's position now. But he does still have that warrior up, which we think is still going to be taking an easy win. But maybe blitzchung has some different ideas about it.
Now that is what I call casting, Gia. What a segue. This matchup is not cute. I fully agree here. I believe Druid Mirror. It was beautiful. I loved it. I'm just going to take the piss out of you anyway. The Druid Mirror coming up in Game 2, though, Gia. Taking a look quickly at the lists for both of these players. We've got Shaxy with always bringing something a little bit different to the table. And this week, it's no different. He's cut the Ysera, which is, if not standard, very common, at least in the moment. And instead has a Starfall, which is a huge difference maker in this matchup.
Right. It is very anti-aggro. I would say this is kind of closer to a list that I would have expected to see last week when the meta was very, very aggressive, except maybe the lack of bees as an inclusion. But it's funny that we saw Druids first playing Kael'thas, then they were playing Ysera, and now Shaxy says neither of them are good enough.
Job done.
But you know what is good enough? This hand. That is a cute hand, Derek.
That is a very cute looking hand. Very powerful as well, much like Billy and Bessie. Cute but secretly powerful here, with the Fungal Fortunes into Coin, Bait, Glowfly. And given that Shaxy is the player who has the Starfall and not blitzchung, I am absolutely loving Shaxy's position in this game.
I can see the future, and it's blitzchung hanging his head after maybe dejectedly having to play a Wrath and Bog Beam on 2 Glowflies. But he won't even have the mana to play both of them because the Glowflies are coming now. Already, Shaxy onto the board with a huge push, and because of the fungal portion of the flies, this just tends to happen sometimes. And in the mirror, when you're not running the overgrowth, the Starfall, there's no good way of coming back. The only saving grace for blitzchung is that there's no big payoff cards yet available for Shaxy, so I expect that he'll be drawing with the Rising Winds to try and find the power of the wild. And there it is off the top! My goodness. And this does look very one-sided, but you might be a little bit shocked, Derek, now that blitzchung just spent that turn playing overgrowth, but we did see something similar from him before, where he didn't waste any time trying to answer a little bit of the board. He was saying that he needs to force Shaxy to not have any further pressure and try to get the win with Mount Cellar.
Oh, absolutely. This was the out. If he draws Mount Cellar and can then go for Ironbark, Bog Beam, and hit, dare I say, Gia, a double diving Griffin, then maybe he can find himself in a situation where he's coming back. But this is not that situation. GG.
Yeah, even if he heals up to 16, Shaxy showing 15 and a hero power.
That is the way that the Druid Mirror unfortunately can go a lot of the time. I think that, blitzchung gave himself the one out of being able to ramp up to Mount Cellar, but if one player hits the Glowfly in the dream hand and the other player doesn't, there's not all too much that can be done. So well played for Shaxy. Not going to go on about that game too much. He just got the hand. He played it perfectly. It wasn't that hard to do.
True enough. But maybe the cat could have played that hand and won too.
Maybe he's the mastermind behind all of this, Gia, just meowing at him to keep Fungal Fortunes and find the Glowfly.
Indeed. And that's why we can never see the cat on camera. It's too powerful. We would just die on the spot. In any case...
Loving the lore that we're building for APAC here. We're really fleshing out the universe here.
It is a demigod, don't you know, Derek? You can't lay eyes on them because they shine too brightly and you get blinded immediately. I think there's some type of Greek legend about something similar. Definitely wasn't a cat, but I could very easily imagine Shaxy's cat taking on that.
Yeah, I think that was Medusa that turns you to stone as soon as you look at it. But, you know, the comparisons, they're just never endless. Snakes for hair, killed by Perseus. It is just really one for one with the cat. But moving on away from my tenuous knowledge of Greek legends at best, we can see that the next matchup is going to be the Warrior versus Druid. Finally, we're going to get to see what blitzchung has been leading all towards. You have to have at the moment a very, very strong reason indeed to not ban the Warrior. And now that it's going to be up against the Druid or Shaxy, maybe we'll get to see blitzchung's thinking. I hope we do.
True enough. As far as the warrior side of the matchup, I've seen two ways that they can go for the victory. The first is trying to build up early tempo, and then by the time the druid plays the glowfly swarm, sometimes they can just take a bunch of efficient trades and stay ahead on board. Usually involves things like Warmaul Challenger. But if that's not the case, sometimes they can just draw the risky skipper hands, which clears druid's boards turn after turn.
And this is looking like a pretty prime example of situation A here for Shaxy, where all the pieces aren't together quite yet, but the start is there. There's the makings of a very, very powerful hand here indeed.
And it's not very often I say you don't go for Corsair Cash on 2, but if you've got Serpent Egg into Terran Gorfian on curve, that just looks extremely powerful.
You didn't have to mull it over that time?
Nope. Well, I mulled it over for about half a second and decided that this was correct. It's even got this Rampage, so the second a damaging effect comes down, or comes into the hand, then the Warmaul Challenger can suddenly start whacking away for a bunch of damage as well.
Yeah, the real thinking here for Shaxy needs to be, how do I withstand a glowfly swarm? Because that is the first real threat he is going to have to see, which he has to try and pass. And as it currently stands, I'm thinking probably double Corsair Cash is the best way to do so.
Seems the most efficient use of mana, but I wonder if there's ever an argument for just playing the Warmaul off curve. And then
could then go Corsair Cash Weapon on turn 5.
Indeed. And if the Warmaul gets traded over by a bunch of glowflies, I feel like that's something of a win for Shaxy because it's just soaked up that much damage. And if not, he could even just bump it and rampage it twice on the following turn. But as far as I'm concerned, the weapons seem like the more consistent approach.
Does give him a higher chance of finding Ankar as well, which is, I think, the weapon he would much prefer to get down on the next couple of turns.
Agreed. Try and get the risky skipper in case blitzchung goes a little bit too wide on the board.
Double Livewire, not ideal, but not a disaster as well. The Lackey, he could potentially use to just hit a Kobold Lackey or a Rush Lackey, potentially. Try and clear up a little bit more of the Glowfly.
The Rush actually has great synergy with the Warmaul Challenger, just to put it at 2 attack. It's all the difference between 2 and 1 when you're lining up against these Glowflies. Oh, Skipper!
Whoa.
Not right now, but that is potentially huge later.
Yeah, just a couple of turns away from the dream hand here for Shaxy.
So Shaxy could trade away one minion, rampage it, trade away the other. So the question is, what's the better rampage target here? Would tend to think... Oh. I was actually going to say Terran.
Don't you want Terran to die so you can get the egg out and just, you know, keep churning through the value a bit quicker?
Maybe I'm thinking a bit too much in terms of decks that actually have AoE, but I feel that creating 2 layers, like one layer of a threat, which is the Terran, incentivizes it to die, and then you get the second layer as payoff. Whereas sometimes blitzchung just ignores the Terran if it's not buff, and then you have to trade it yourself.
That's fair.
Is he healing
But this way
it?
it's easier to trade
Okay.
it. There's a lot of positives and negatives. I see your point.
Yeah. Not cut and dry. Oh,
Whoa.
potential for huge dividends for Shaxy here. So, do you ever hold off on the Bloodsworn? He could go Warmaul, rampage the Warmaul, Taunt it up. It probably doesn't die. And then go for the Bloodsworn.
There's so many different lines that are presented already. You just want to give yourself the highest chance. I think you can afford to be really greedy with the Bloodsworn now. Is the important thing.
Right. I like this a lot.
Set up for Rampage on the War Maul, and then copy it next turn. Like this turn, Rampage the War Maul, go for the Kobold Lackey. This as well. Brilliant. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I see the merit in Taunt Lackey over Kobold Lackey. It's a very nitpicky thing, but I feel that the Kobold removes the same amount of damage that the Taunt heals the Wormhole, and this just gives blitzchung the option of how to distribute that damage. But in any case, a 4-13 is still very difficult.
Exactly, and the argument is that later on, I think the Kobold Lackey could be used as a little bit of extra damage when it's 100% necessary to kill off an exotic Mount Seller, perhaps, or help to clear off more of the minions that come from exotic Mount Seller, whereas here, the difference really is negligible.
Good point. Blitzchung setting up for a magnificent turn 7. As far as I can see, Shaxy will get a very, very powerful Wormhole Challenger, but maybe there won't be enough minions remaining in hand to deal with what's going to be an onslaught of beasts.
It is going to be close indeed. Shaxy needs to be very cautious here because he has the opportunity to just start going all in here. You get the Korkron, the Bloodsworn down, develop massively onto the board and try and set up 2-turn lethal. But then he does, like you said, need to be afraid of Mount Seller and a big Ironbark Bogbeater.
Even so, developing minions is a way, in theory, to fight back against the Mount Seller turn, because it's not like all of those minions have rush, right?
Of course not, Gia.
There's also fair reason to... Corsair Cash gets Anchor. Guaranteed, right?
Was this better than just playing out the Korkron that turn, though? Like, it's filling up a lot of board space with minions that don't do very much.
Yeah, that's my question as well.
I definitely preferred the more aggressive approach there of just trying to set up 2-turn lethal. I agree that it probably gets answered by a big Mount Seller turn, but so does most things here.
Shaxy seems to be upset about something. He was shaking his head quite a lot, but let's see first what's in the cage. That was, I appreciated it.
No, it was great. It was fine on its own, though. That's fine on its own as well.
Question is where he wants to put this Ironbark. Probably still on the Mount Seller. The taunt is just a few health too short of it being like guaranteed to take down one of these Wormholes.
I think that was another Bloodsworn.
Oh my gosh.
That is powerful right there. He could go for a Goblin Lackey first in order to try and find Rush, and then if he casts it on the Bloodsworn, when he copies it, the copy will then also have Rush, which will allow him to clear up more of the board.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
I'll show you who's boss.
But turns out he's going for a Skipper plus... I'm not exactly sure if this was a Skipper turn. You can only play...
I'm willing to hear him out. I'm going to see what he had in mind before I judge.
Okay. 3 minions with the Lackey can be played. Oh, Commanding Shout! That is insane! Skipper just keeps going.
That is actually insane.
He wants the egg to die off, so he's doing this first, and then he goes Commanding Shout. Okay, it's the same, because nothing dies yet this turn. And he goes for the Shout. And the Kobold Lackey. This was sick. Wait, there's a Blood Foil, but there's no space. There's no space. This is a commanding. Still, though, nutty.
Oh, and this overflow has got to be the most brutal overflow that a Druid has ever had to cast. Look at how much healing his opponent's getting.
Blitzchung is not running Starfall, and no Druids have been running Swipe for quite a while now, so there's just no good way for blitzchung to clear off all of these at once.
Yeah, I mean, Shaxy is clearly, not perfectly happy with his play there. I think it's fair to say, with the Ysera going off the top just for the final devastating blow to blitzchung here. But, I mean, I'm sure on that incredibly complicated turn, there were quite a few ways that Shaxy could have improved it. He very possibly could have gotten away with copying another War Maul instead of the risky skippers. It's very complicated indeed, but the main thing is he cleared the board and set up a very good position for himself.
Blitzchung stay alive on board from his perspective. Of course, we can see the Korkron, but say heal himself up if he draws and gets a Bog Beam, but even then, not worth trying, and the Warrior gets another win, and yet again, we don't know what Blitzchung's plan is by leaving this up and not even bringing the deck.
We also don't know what's going through Shaxy's mind, because this is, I think, the most upset that I've ever seen him at a game of Hearthstone, which, it's good to see that players get upset when they make mistakes rather than when their opponent gets really lucky. I think that shows a good mindset of trying to improve the situation and the way that you are playing your games of Hearthstone. But I'd be very curious to hear what his thinking was, because that was an immensely complicated turn at the end.
I think he went about it nearly the best that anyone could, and maybe it was the cat. That's my best guess. Causing trouble at the back again.
Yeah. It was a very, very cool play, to say the least. And the Warrior, like you said, taking a win there against blitzchung. It's not a good matchup, to be fair. Maybe he's trying to find the the Hunter up against the Warrior instead. Maybe he likes his build of Rogue up against Warrior. That's, I think, a little bit of a closer matchup. But overall, still left somewhat confused, or at least curious, I should say at the very least, about the game plan for blitzchung and Kin leaving up the Warrior. But now it's out of the way, we can go back to the good old-fashioned Rogue mirror that we are seeing time and time again, Gia.
And the key thing to point out in the Rogue mirrors usually is what kind of secrets are they running and what kind of secrets am I running. But for Shaxy's case, as we saw a while ago, he's cut the secret package altogether, but not in favor of the stealth package, but rather this Umbral Skulker for additional payoff off of the invokes.
Does, of course, need to find all that to make it come together first, whereas I think on the other side, before even getting fancy about invokes, Umbral Skulkers, and all that nonsense, just in terms of a strong curve, blitzchung is in a great position right from the get-go.
And it's not looking too bad for Shaxy either. I think daggering up and not attacking here might signal to blitzchung that something's up. He wants to backstab this, activate Miscreant next turn.
And therefore, does that mean instead of going for the Praise Galakron, we see Coin Miscreant instead?
I do think so. Although you could make the argument that if you get the Faceless Lackey or the Taunt Lackey, that kind of puts a wrench in Shaxy's plan, or at least gives you a board to develop with anyway, and then you still have Coin Miscreant into another Lackey on the follow-up. But this play, I'm not entirely sure, as it floats some mana.
Yeah, I guess even if you look at not just the Faceless or the Taunt Lackey, but also Goblin Lackey and Kobold Lackey, they weren't good immediately, but what they do allow is for this turn, Coin Miscreant, and then you clear with the Goblin Lackey and the Backstab. So it does still work out, I think, just about in blitzchung's favor.
Maybe I was caster visioning a little bit there, because the other thing that Coin Miscreant walks into in the mirror is, of course, Seal Fate.
Yep.
That's another reason for not daggering down the Pharaoh Cat. And that's why a lot of the pro rogue players tend to advocate not coining Miscreant in the mirror. Speaking of Seal Fate, blitzchung's got a prime target for it here.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why SS7 Agent kind of left the meta last rotation when Rogue was at its peak dominance. Because of exactly this. It is absolutely disastrous for this tempo swing. You invoke your Galakron, clear off the board, get down a pretty mediocre Lackey overall.
Spitting Camel's about to kill one of them off.
Yeah. It's still a 2-4. It's pretty good, even if it spits away the Lackey that actually summoned it. You can't be biting the hand that feeds you, Camel.
I will act as your
I would say it's pretty bad. I think that having the two 1/1s is a huge difference when Rogue can only dagger down one of them, especially on a turn where you could possibly top that faceless structure.
Good point.
Sap, pretty much the only efficient pick here.
Praise Galakron, Goblin Lackey, and Dagger still just falls short of taking out the Shield of Galakron. So maybe you start with Praise Galakron on your 1/1.
Lackey, yeah, I do like
Yeah,
this
and then
target.
see what you get.
Ideally, he wants to preserve the camel at the end of his turn. If he got another Rush Lackey or Kobold, that would be possible, but it's not quite it.
Problem is, though, that if he just goes for like a Sap here and a Faceless Lackey, the Camel probably takes out something else again.
I need a straw to break this camel's back. Come on! It's so bad, right? But maybe it hits the 2-drop unless it's another camel.
Hey, there we go. The nuts, one might say. If one were crazy. But the important thing is now that with that invoke having come down, and now a couple of options as to how to invoke again, Shaxy can get rolling
We saw the cat!
with the Skulker. Did we see the cat? I missed it.
Feels bad for you. It's white and gray.
Oh, that sounds cute.
But yeah, it is very awkward here because he wants to get the second invoke down as soon as possible, but he also wants to do something like Dagger Up to get rid of these awkwardly statted minions. Oh? Pointing the I feel like if you're pointing the Eviscerate anywhere, it's going to be on the camel. And I also have questions about the the Praise Galakron target. Why not the camel? Unless he's planning on clearing both the lackeys for exactly Tog. They're on that.
I guess he's relying on the camel killing off his own ward. I don't know if I agree with that, though. I think it may have been time to get rid of it.
That looks pretty strange to me as well. Playing with a handicap. Alright, crickets for that joke. Anyway, the flick on curve doesn't seem quite good enough here for blitzchung. Probably gets a better target later on. But rest of the turn, feeling weak, but he's got good turn 7s on the follow-up.
He does plenty of options as well with the old Umbral Skulker. And with an Edwin as well. Now we are talking. This is a hand.
Gonna start the test the waters for ambush because that would be the disaster scenario for his ideal Edwin turn. Doesn't have any damage cards.
Pretty much lock him out of going for the big Edwin now with no way to clear it off. Which is okay. He doesn't have to go for it this turn.
Can divert for sure. Goes for another lackey here. Rush or Kobold. Again, the premium options. But that's probably the third best in this situation. Whew.
Kronk's off the top. I think that has to lead into a Galakron now.
Mm-hmm.
It's drawing 2 cards, I believe, at this point.
But blitzchung says, this is the non-secret version, so what's the answer for Winged Guardian? That's actually pretty good recognition as well.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there are still answers. It's pretty much just flick, though, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
As the camel even spits on one of the most powerful cards in Hearthstone, the Winged Guardian,
Can you
in the
imagine?
sky, sniped out the air.
But here is the big payoff turn for Shaxy. Both questing, he's running 2 of those in the deck. The whole reason for including Umbral Skulker alongside the Edwin.
This turn is insane. This is one of the most powerful rogue turns I think I've ever seen.
Yep. Not the greatest evolve. And blitzchung can flick this away, thankfully for him, and he can rush the flick into the questing, but that was nearly disastrous.
Yeah.
I don't know of many other hand combinations for blitzchung that can answer this as cleanly as what he currently has.
I mean, he's definitely rewarded for holding on to the flick on turn 6. It was something I was strongly considering, just because the rest of his hand was so dead at that point. But that decision turned out to have kept him in the game, because if it hadn't been for this answer, it would just be donezo.
Mm-hmm. Gonna have to face tank 8 damage though if he wants to get rid of the questing while preserving his Wing Guardian. You know, I don't hate it. He's still at 29. He just rushes the flick, trades Camel and face.
Yeah, I think he's looking for some kind of lines where he can sacrifice off his Ancestral Guardian and then rush the Reborn part, but it's just not there. So overall, I agree, this is definitely the way to go. And because of that, blitzchung has got himself in a position where he is not only ahead on board, he's also ahead on board heading into a Galakron turn, which is premium.
And even though we see from Shaxy, he's got more cards in hand right now, the Galakron is going to offset that difference really easily. And Shaxy's already used that big payoff turn, the big push onto the board. And I think it was absolutely right that he dropped both of those threats on the same turn, because presenting the threats together makes it so much more difficult for Rogue to deal with their limited mana. Did the best he could, but blitzchung had the answer. So now it's just going to have to be 2 of those 4/2s. Looking at Feywing now, plus Wasteland Assassin. Sorry, doesn't fit.
This guy's toast.
And despite what Shaxy Jr. is trying to do to distract him from his turn, he still ends up spending all the mana and putting himself in the best spot possible.
Blitzchung, is this full invokes? I think that's... Yeah, that's the only reason for holding off on Galakron this turn.
I can definitely agree with that. It's so interesting, the deviations that blitzchung has taken that have put him in such a good position. Again, it's what I talk about. It's the non-obvious lines that he goes for. I was looking very heavily at Galakron on 7, leading into the Kronks. But now, he still has the Winged Guardian in play. It hasn't been killed off yet, and he's going into a fully invoked Galakron, and with the Kronk still in hand. This is so far from the way I would have played it, but it's just a significantly better line, even though it took me a while to realize.
I hope you saw the cat this time.
I did see the cat this time. It was very cool.
Tell you what though, Shaxy's got Deathwing. That's not something you ever play around. Unless you're fighting exactly Flurry.
Your presence.
I thought you were going to say he's got Deathwing, which is something that's very not cute. Which also would have been true. Yeah, you just dump your hand, right? You can even make a 6-drop on this turn.
Yeah, seems good.
Oh yeah.
And blitzchung, of course, doesn't have the... Oh my god.
What is that cat doing?
I don't know. How does it get all the way up there? I mean, it's a cat, of course. It can climb anywhere, but jeez.
Maybe his laptop's really warm or something? I'm just not sure what could be so enticing about his laptop/webcam.
Back to the game, though. Blitzchung, of course, this is a lot of pressure to deal with, and he doesn't have the possibility of drawing Kronks off of Galakron. So he's going to have to get some pretty premium removals or just taunts to stall, because Shaxy is presented. It's 18 damage now on board.
Dark investigation.
Galakron's, after such a patient game plan by blitzchung, he is rewarded with an incredibly powerful Galakron. Even the Faceless Corruptor alone, plus the Shield of Galakron, is nutty how powerful this is. Absolutely insane.
He can play the Faceless and step it and play it again. That's crazy.
I mean, he's pretty close to just lethal on this turn, to be perfectly honest. The Kobold Step
Very
It
close.
Kobold.
Yeah.
Is it 1 damage off lethal with the Goblin as well?
I think so. Yes.
What if?
In which
So
case,
if it's not lethal,
Yeah.
you can just ignore it because you'll hit it next turn with Kronks anyway. Just make sure you clear off the lifesteal.
yeah, very clean.
Your presence offends me.
Double time.
I'm a little bit surprised to not see the step on the Kobold to deny the 4 damage healing. But again, probably not a huge deal because blitzchung has the board, has the health advantage, has the Galakron.
Yeah, as long as he keeps the step for Kronks, this is still just absolutely catastrophic for Shaxy.
That word has cat in it. Nice job
I have
there.
no idea what you're talking about.
And this Deathwing, on board is about to be cataclysmic. But still not quite enough.
Yeah, and with the very appropriate cat off the top, Shaxy may be wishing he has 9 lives, but he only has 3 in this best of 5 as blitzchung takes the win. And we go to game 5.
In a very spectacular fashion. It's not often you get to see Deathwing come down on the other side and be literally the only thing left for the rogue, both in terms of health total and board presence. But there you go.
Yeah, I really just want to, again, highlight, I think, how well blitzchung played that mirror. It was very easy to play your cards for a little bit too little value there because of how much pressure he was putting onto his opponent. But in the end, he realized the likelihood he had of drawing those extra invokes and just the power of Winged Guardian. You hit the nail exactly on the head there. That without the secret package, there were just very few answers, and he was rewarded because the flick wasn't there, and he just pulls so far into the lead.
Indeed. I also want to highlight that I think Shaxy had a significant disadvantage because of the cat. I hate to say it because it is really cute, but if you're going to play any deck and have a distraction on the side, Rogue is probably the worst one because you have to enter in so many micro decisions and small commands with all of the trades, all of the lackey generation, and the Rogue mirror especially. You're playing at least 50% more cards than other classes would when you're playing Rogue. And having any reduced time available is definitely not going to help Shaxy out. It's too bad that you probably can't go next door and ask for someone to take care of your cat because quarantine.
Yes. Fortunately, the upside is that it does give you an increased chance of drawing Pharaoh Cat on 1, which always helps in the mirror. Outside of that, though, I agree. Pure downside in terms of the concentration that you can put on Hearthstone. Quality of life, I think it massively skyrockets it. But that does mean now, with that aside, we are moving on to, again, the Rogue for Shaxy. It's been a real letdown for him so far this series. And the Druid on the other side for blitzchung. And man, oh man, am I not feeling good for Shaxy. Cat or no cat, this is a disaster matchup.
It really is. And to be fair, I don't think that the inclusion of the, say, payoff package, I'm not sure what I want to call it, maybe the questing package, over the secret package, I think it's probably better against Druid
Great point.
than secrets, just to give you a chance to snowball the early game and race them before they get the Glowfly down.
You know what? I totally agree, Gia. I think that is far and away Shaxy's best chance of taking the game. So, he held on to, I think, some of those cards at the start just to try and give him a bit of early tempo. But if he can find himself the Skulker and the Questings, Druid may just not have an answer and he can go for the win. But my oh my, is he going to have to find it fast.
Yeah, blitzchung has the dream hand that Shaxy pretty much had. The difference is the inclusion of Wild Growth in the list from blitzchung makes it so that the curve into Glowfly is super premium.
This guy's toast.
Oh man. Shaxy is in a rough spot here. The Fungal Fortunes, Wild Growth into Glowfly. You've got to be kidding me, Gia.
Wait, I don't have a good pun in response. I need some time. blitzchung, can you please rope this Wild Growth?
Message the admins. Excuse me, I need to think of a terrible joke for the cast. If the players could just hold on for a moment.
It turns out
And
he
deviates.
goes for, yeah.
Yeah, over to the Overgrowth instead. It still sets up, of course, for the very powerful Glowfly for full amount on the following turn.
What this says to me is that he's only planning on playing one ramp card throughout the mid game. It's either Overgrowth or Wild Growth. And if he goes coin Overgrowth, spending the coin that turn, he gets back the payoff by that extra mana crystal for the rest of the turn. And he still has enough spells to fill the board with Glowfly, even using the coin. So I like the logic.
And we do always talk about, while, we've been saying that the Umbral Skulker and the Questing Adventurer is the key play for Shaxy. The key turn that you almost always face in this matchup at some point is, can you answer the Glowfly Swarm? Which Shaxy here looks like he's got a reasonable answer to. Not quite so strong as some of the others we've seen today, but backstab, trades, maybe shadow stepping back the Miscreant in order to get more lackeys is looking pretty strong.
I definitely like the look at that. At first I was looking at Shield of Galakron on curve, but now that you present the option of stepping Miscreant after it's taken half a value trade, seems really, really powerful.
Just presents so many strong lackeys. Obviously, Goblin and Kobold as the premium options, but even just developing more with Faceless Lackeys I don't hate.
Another camel! Cats and camels. That is just the theme of this series.
And despite this menagerie, still no Mount Seller available for blitzchung to follow this up with.
Even if there isn't a menagerie, he can at least go for something like, wow, that is very strong. Even evolve the camel or the miscreant.
Yikes.
Yeah, that is a yikes, especially if the camel killed it.
That was such a funny animation across the map. Yeet.
Okay, for blitzchung, he can summon 2 eagles, buff everything up, bog beam away the 3/2, use Iron Bark if he wants as well. But I feel like there should be a way to fit in Soul of the Forest this turn.
Yeah.
Oh, he draws.
Raw instead.
That's unexpected.
Yeah, I guess his thinking is that if he just continues, you know, petering along with the minions instead of drawing, that's not quite good enough. Whereas instead he needs to hit, obviously, primarily the Mount Seller, but also Overflow or Fungal Fortunes in order to turn this around.
I get that thinking, but I wouldn't consider something like Rising Winds and Soul of the Forest petering along. I think it's a very
fair,
strong play onto the board. And clearly, blitzchung evaluated it, but he's going for something even more high value.
Well, with this line of play, he does still manage to set up for the Overflow next turn, while staying decidedly ahead on board. So having seen it all shake out again, it's that classic blitzchung. It's not the first thing I see. And I fully see your point that maybe Soul of the Forest could have locked down better, but I think this locks down enough, but still gives him the powerful option of drawing Ysera or the Mount Seller.
Sure. I'm not completely sold, because it seems like this gives Shaxy maybe a window to take back the board, and then you spend that turn playing Overflow.
Oh, do you?
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, very, very easy Ysera. And now, all of a sudden, the Overflow becomes not only value, not only healing, but board development. All the dragons that come down are likely to be absolutely disgusting, and blitzchung is looking so good in the rest of this game.
It really is, but the Umbral Skulker, at least for Shaxy, is active. Not quite the big payoff in hand just yet. No questing, no Edwin. But maybe he
Ethereal
can find, some type of card draw.
Right, and Ethereal Lackey has also been changed relatively recently so that it can find invoke cards. Obviously, specifically the Seal Fate and Praise Galakron, both of which would be pretty good here to upgrade the Galakron as soon as possible.
Sure.
The damage is so annoying. The backstab's just lining up a little bit weirdly.
I think you end up still just taking the backstab because it's the easiest to fit into a future turn. There's arguments for Vendetta to be played at some point, but not now, because surely he wants to get this Miscreant down.
Choose soon. Oh, up to no good. Me too.
Yeah, I had another couple of options there. It was either you save all the coins to try and set up for a powerful Edwin or Questing Adventurer on the following turn along with the Galakron, or you just develop as much tempo as you possibly can right now to try and fight back against their dragons. Or maybe even just deliver a quicker lethal. Neither sounds especially likely to win, but this is probably the best chance that Shaxy has.
Blitzchung is popping off now. 5 cards drawn. Still no dragons, but even if there aren't in total. Okay, there's one. He's got the Mount Seller for next turn.
We are friends now. Hello,
Okay, gets the single weakest dragon in the game, so overall very underwhelming. But that's not really the point. He's still decidedly ahead on board, not anywhere near dying, and could just continue with the Mount Seller next turn.
Oh, I'm kind of surprised to see him commit the bog. Oh, because he cycled the Wrath.
Yeah.
I thought he would just use it as 3 damage.
Yeah. Could have got him another dragon. You know, he's fairly likely to get one on every single draw now.
Yeah, that's the whole reasoning for it, I suppose. The Plague of Madness allows him to kill off the Ysera.
Yeah. Yeah. It ain't game winning, but not much is at this point.
If he does play it though, you give up the Galakron. So I think Shaxy's hoping for one of the best reborn minions to pair with this. I'm thinking Wasteland Assassin.
Oh my god, it's so close. The fact that it was exactly Praise Galakron as well. He can spend so much mana on this turn, and next turn he sets up for potentially drawing Seal Fate and then coin the Galakron all on the same turn. Shaxy has outs here to swing back the game.
You can see it. And with the pick of Betrayal, it was very fast, but I think it's quite a heads up given that the dragons, when drawn, I mean, blitzchung doesn't have any say on their positioning unless he summons something in between them, which is only the Mount Sellers in terms of minions from hand.
Obviously, Mount Seller is looking fairly juicy on this turn. Just Mount Seller, Crystal Power, Wrath, possibly even for a draw to try and find some of those dragons as well.
I'm looking at the Fungal Fortunes.
Oh, wow.
I supply only the finest creatures.
I think he's got a decent chance of drawing something 0 cost, and even if he does end up, of course, the Griffin comes to play. Even if he does end up drawing, overdrawing a card, I should say.
Yeah.
It's fine. Wow!
Oh!
Good explorer, come prepared.
We're just on a roller
Most
coaster
of these dragons
here.
are big whips. Oh, no more. This is insane. This is insane. And you know what? The 2-3 is actually insane. It protects against the betrayal. Oh.
Oh my god, you're right!
Blitzchung thought this all through.
And so does that.
Yeah.
Protects against the dagger just going into the 3-4 and getting betrayed. What a world we've come to.
Oh my goodness, that is so close!
Mana's not quite there. Does he think,
It's so close.
can he survive another turn with this betrayal?
I mean, if he can get Spell Lackey into another betrayal, maybe.
Resting just that little bit too late. That is gonna be the GG. Blitzchung takes a 3-2. Puts himself at a 2-0 score now, counting yesterday.
Yeah. Huge congratulations to Blitzchung. And I think, again, this has been a very, very strong week for him. He had no appearances on stream in the first 2 weeks due to finishing bottom 8 both times. But as soon as we did see him on stream, I really liked what we were seeing from him last week. And this week, thankfully, he is showing no signs of slowing down. The real weak spot here for Shaxy, which has been storied time and time again, was the Rogue. 3-0 swept on the Rogue by the Hunter, the Rogue Mirror, and the Druid for Blitzchung. And even though we thought his strategy of leaving up the Warrior was unconventional and arguably didn't actually even help him in this matchup, he might have been at a bigger advantage if he had banned it, something is working out for him being at 2-0.
Yeah, I do think that that's kind of the side effect of Conquest, where even if you bring not the best deck, if your opponent just has one bad deck that you can prey on, you can still end up taking the series. And I would agree with you that maybe the way that Blitzchung got to his victories wasn't ideal in terms of preparation. And again, this is just as far as we can see, because clearly he and Kin prepared something that we're not aware of in terms of leaving out the Warrior. It still is no fault to him because he played the series once it actually got into the game. Best he could, found amazing lines and just very consistent aggro play that we all know Blitzchung for.
We do indeed, but they are, of course, not the only players that we have today. That was only match 3, and taking a look at the schedule, we can see what we've coming up later on today. Before, of course, we send you over to Europe and then America's leg. For all of that, Tom versus Dawn. Tom 60229 hasn't had the most impressive performance so far here in this year's Hearthstone Grandmasters. He had a very, very good run last year, of course, but unable to back it up. Whereas Dawn was the player who was in contention even right up to the last day of getting through to the top, getting through to Division A. But unfortunately for him, blitzchung thwarted those efforts.
Indeed, and Dawn has probably the most interesting lineup out of everyone in APAC today, because not only is he bringing Mage and Priest, he's left out Demon Hunter.
Yeah, very, very cool archetype that I cannot wait to get into. Before, of course, we finish off with Samuel Sao versus Tyler, another one of the players to go with Mage and Priest, which I'm excited to see. Priest is a deck that I was hoping we wouldn't see too many mirrors of, because those can be a little bit long-winded, I think it's fair to say, but as an overall archetype, I think it's very, very cool at the moment. And maybe, although I wouldn't necessarily expect it too heavily, we could see Warrior being left up by Dawn in the next series.
And I'm making a request to let me throw to break, because I finally came up with a pun. And it is actually really bad now that I led up to it. Because we are just going to go to a longer break, guys, because we do have to take some time to eat. But it will be those last two series at the end of the day. Don't go anywhere. We will catch you later.